Alright guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So tomorrow is such a big day, such a massive day, right? And it goes without saying, tomorrow at 4 o'clock, we see the official 53-man rosters for not only just the Jets, but for every team in football. And look, of course, it's going to be so important, so crucial to, look at these moves and analyze them and break them all down. But it's also really important to keep tabs on who's being released from other teams, right? Are there veterans that might not really fit the new coaching staff? Are there maybe young players that could be in the same boat? I mean, we literally just saw that same exact situation with Jahan Dotson in Washington, right? Former first-round wide receiver, not too long ago here, traded out before cutdown day even happened. Could we potentially see, guys that maybe Joe Douglas had his eye on in the draft that he couldn't really land? I'm talking in the later rounds or in the UDFA market, right? Could we see Douglas maybe scoop somebody up? And also, too, on the flip side, which of these players, right? Because we can see good young players on this Jets squad, maybe the guys that don't make the team, they get put on the practice squad, they could get claimed, right? We saw that with, we've seen that a lot with the Jets in the past couple of seasons, but one player that stands out is Jason Pinnock, right? Somebody who a lot of Jets fans wanted them to keep. They didn't. He ends up with the Giants and ended up becoming a star. He played valuable minutes for the G-Men, right? So it's going to be a crazy day. I cannot wait for it. It's going to be super exciting. And in this one, I wanted to break down, right, kind of give my 53-man prediction, 53-man roster prediction, sorry. But before we dive into it, this video is actually sponsored. Let's go. Let's check that out. All right, guys. So ahead of the NFL season, I partnered with SeatGeek, the #1 rated ticketing app, which is today's video sponsor. The season's right around the corner, right? Jets 49ers, it's almost here. I cannot wait. It's almost crazy to think that the offseason has flown by this much, but here we are. Right, here we are. And SeatGeek hooked it up for a discount code, right? Use my code Jetscentral for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek. That's $20 off your first purchase with promo code Jetscentral. Make sure you click in the link in the description to download the app. And what's really cool too is that you can use this code for Jets games, for other football games, right? Other NFL games, college football, baseball's in full swing. Obviously the playoffs are coming up for baseball too in a little bit. According to SeatGeek, though, they have over 70,000 events on their app, on their site here. And again, you can use that code for $20 off your first purchase. And personally, my favorite part about using them is that they rate their own tickets, right? They have their own like grading system, 1 through 10. Green is good, red is bad. So for example, I'm down in Tampa right now. What's cool is that you can set your location and it'll pull up all the local events, which is awesome. So the #1 trending event is the Dolphins at Buccaneers preseason game. Of course, it's a football game. I'll click on one ticket. And this is what I was talking about, right? So this first listing here has a 2 next to it. So not really considered the best deal. But then if you scroll down, this one right beneath it is considered a 7. It's in a green, great deal, 10, 10, 10, 9. And then it starts to trickle off here depending on, again, the grading, the pricing, the positioning in the stadium and whatnot. But yeah, thanks so much for listening. Back to the vid. So with quarterback, super simple, 2 players here, Aaron Rodgers, Tyrod Taylor, nothing too crazy. Jordan Travis is not ready to play. He was not going to be ready to play. The Jets knew this when they drafted him, but the latest update that we have got from Robert Saleh, unfortunately, is that it's taking a little longer than expected. So it is what it is. As far as Andrew Peasley and Adrian Martinez, you could probably, or Saleh or I guess probably Hackett can pick the guy that he prefers and stash him on the practice squad, or if you get a sense that both guys are really well liked across the league, you could probably put both on the practice squad, knowing that one will get claimed. If I had to take a guess, I would probably say Martinez makes the practice squad, but we'll see, right? We'll see. And in that emergency situation where Rodgers gets hurt, then the Jets would just call one up to officially be the backup quarterback. That's kind of how I'm eyeing it. Next up with running back, of course, the big 3, Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis, but I do feel like Izzy makes the team. Why? Because A, he's still a really young player going into his second year with upside. B, I thought towards the tail end of camp and also that last preseason game, he flashed. He in a showcase game, in a put up or shut up game, he really stepped up to the plate and did some nice stuff. And also, right? The Jets traditionally in the past have carried the three quarterbacks. Now, in this situation or scenario rather, we're only carrying two. So you now have that extra roster spot. And of course, you can maybe argue, let's just throw in another tackle. Let's just throw in another pass rusher. And both of those arguments are completely valid. But, and I would also maybe argue that I would maybe look to if I was running the team, I would probably throw in an extra offensive lineman. Connor McGovern is still out on the open market. We'll see. But again, this is me just trying to read what the Jets will do. And with that said, Izzy as that RB4. Next up, wide receiver here. We're going Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams. He should be ready for the start of the season. Xavier Gipson, Malachi Corley, Alan Lazard, and Irv Charles. Now, there is some debate about that last wide receiver spot. Should it be Brown Lee? Should it be Irv Charles? Should it be, maybe a receiver that gets cut somewhere else and then we can bring him in? Should we trade for a guy? But I think at the end of the day, the Jets feel pretty comfortable with where they're at with the receiver position. If they weren't, I feel like we would be working the phones more. We would be bringing in free agent guys for workouts, and we're just simply not seeing that. So with that said, we're top heavy. Obviously with Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams, we have two dynamic slot guys in Corley and Gibson. Alan Lazard, the big money, and also has shown a nice or has had a nice showing in camp. Man, it got really dark in here. And then, of course, Irv Charles and his ability to help out in special teams. Next up, tight end here. Again, super simple. Tyler Conklin, Jeremy Ruckert, and Kenny Yeboah. Now, I do think Anthony Firkser, from former Tennessee Titan, he has worked with Todd Downing before in the past. I think he flashed in the preseason. I think there is something there to that. I would not be surprised if there is a couple of voices within the offensive room saying, hey, you know what, I would maybe prefer Firkser here. Because the Jets did ultimately allow Nick Bodden to go, and part of that transition was because of the team liking Firkser. Again, you match that with the good preseason showings. You match that with him being a system fit and knowing some of the Jets coaches already with Keith Carter and fullback flexibility. I could see that argument, but I do think ultimately it'll probably be Kenny Yeboah. Now, looking at the offensive line here, I'm going with 10 offensive linemen. So Tyron Smith, John Simpson, Joe Tippmann, AVT, Morgan Moses, that's the starting five. And then behind those guys, Max Mitchell, Olu Fashanu, Xavier Newman, Carter Warren, and Wes Schweitzer. I feel like it's been that line since the beginning. I think if you were to ask, Jets fans really at the start of summer, right, like around voluntary OTAs, who are your projected 10 offensive linemen to make the 53? It would probably be all of these guys. So nothing too crazy. Again, there's still some guys that I do feel like would potentially fit in as far as free agents go. But if the Jets were truly interested in actually making a move, why wait until a week before the start of the regular season? Like, why not bring in, like, say for example, if the team loved Bakhtiari, they would bring him in. If the team loved Donovan Smith, you would bring him in obviously earlier in the process. Connor McGovern, same deal here. So for me, I think the Jets offensive line is set. Okay, so switching over to the defensive side of the football here, this is where things get pretty controversial, right? Because we have two situations playing out that we just don't really have an idea on where the Jets exactly stand. The first is the whole Haason Reddick situation. When will it end? I have no idea. I would like to say next week at some point before the first game against San Francisco, but I thought it was going to be done within the first 2 weeks of training camp, and that's obviously not the case. We've had zero updates about the situation. It doesn't seem like there's an end in sight. You can maybe point to a couple of key dates, like the early September dates as a potential return, but we've been hearing that a lot throughout training camp. Like, keep an eye on this date. He's probably going to show up. It doesn't happen. So I think in the end, Reddick will show up, and his role will be limited pass rusher, right? I mean, this is a guy who has not had a single practice. He's not had a single preseason game single joint practice, a single meeting with the Jets coaching staff. He has to learn everything. He has to learn the chemistry. He has to learn the system. He has to learn the playbook. He has to learn, ability to play with the guys around him. I think he's extremely good, extremely talented, and he should fit in maybe more seamlessly than just a random player in football, or a random edge rush that the Jets would pick up at this point. But with that said, there's still an onboarding period, so we'll see how the situation plays out. Hopefully he's in camp soon. The second big question here, do the Jets want to go with a bunch of young players, right? We have a bunch of UDFAs that are making plays, they're turning heads, they're having great camps. Eric Watts, McGregor, Leonard Taylor, right? The list goes there. The Jets have a lot of young, talented guys on the defensive line. Do they want to just award those players roster spots, or do they want to give those roster spots to players that maybe they feel more comfortable with, guys that have had NFL experience before? Or the third option, a combination of both. And I think that's where the Jets are going to land here. So, and again, this is a prediction on what I think the Jets are going to do, not necessarily what I would do if I was running the team. But we got Jermaine Johnson, Quinnen Williams, Javon Kinlaw, Will McDonald, of course, the asterisk by Haason Reddick's name, Michael Clemens, Lecky Fotu, Solomon Thomas, Leonard Taylor, and Tack McKinley. I think Tack has earned a roster spot. I think Leonard Taylor has earned a roster spot. Now, the two players that are not on this list, McGregor, right, former UDFA from Michigan, and Eric Watts, UDFA from UConn. Two impressive players. Now, in this scenario here, both players would be put on the practice squad, and you run the risk of both of them getting claimed. Obviously not ideal. So what would be the alternative? You put those guys on the roster, and two guys from this list have to go. Who would they be? The first choice, from the Jets fans that I've spoken to, a lot of people are kind of at their wits' end. Might be too strong of a word, but this whole Clemens situation, it kind of feels. It feels like the fan base, a section of the fan base and the team are on two different islands when it comes to Michael Clemens. It seems like the team loves him. You listen to Saleh, you listen to Ulbrich talk about Michael Clemens, they rave about Michael Clemens, right? The power, the strength, the potential. He is good against the run. He does have a lot of potential to set the edge. Just because you have NFL experience, it doesn't mean you're done growing as a football player. But then, from, again, a section of the fans' point of view, it's like, okay, well, we have these UDFAs that are, super just exciting off the edge. They're making plays. They're creating havoc against quarterbacks. They're getting in the backfield. They're obviously younger and cheaper. Let's just roll with them. And kind of see what we have. You never know who's going to be the next great pass rusher in football. So, and then also too, the other big one is Tack McKinley. Now, a lot of Jets fans want McKinley to make this roster, but he would be the other right, like the odd man out. Like if you're gonna put Watts and McGregor, the two edge rushers on this roster, two edge guys have to bounce, and obviously Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson, they're staying. So then the whole question is, okay, does Reddick show up? Does he not show up? If he doesn't show up, then I think that first name up would be McGregor. But if he does, Reddick's obviously going to be taking that roster spot. Now, looking at linebacker here, I'm going with 5 players: C.J. Mosley, Quincy Williams, Jamien Sherwood, Chaz Surratt, and Zaire Barnes. Pretty self-explanatory, right? We have good coverage across all 3 linebacker positions. We have guys that, could obviously relay plays into the huddle, guys that are good against the run, guys that have high motors. Surratt, Barnes, Quincy Williams all have big-time motors. They fly around the football field. You have guys that do well in dropping back in coverage, Jamie and Sherwood specifically. Sherwood also has the flexibility to bounce on the inside. Say, for example, C.J. Mosley gets hurt. If they want to, they could essentially, instead of either making Surratt the starting middle linebacker, what you could do is move Sherwood from weak side to middle, and then just kind of have hope that transition would be maybe a little less seamless. So interesting options here, but I think these 5 are pretty much set. As far as corner, I'm going with 6 here: Sauce Gardner, Michael Carter, DJ Reed, JBC, who's currently hurt, Brandon Eccles, and Quantez Stiggers. Stiggers, to me, man, so impressive this preseason. The tackling ability, the ability to shed blocks, ball skills. I really, really like what I'm seeing from Quantez Stiggers. Jets fans were pumped up when we drafted him, of course, but you can really tell, like, actually seeing him in the green and white, you can tell he's played professional football, which is awesome, right? Obviously, former Toronto Argonaut. So, really, really excited about the cornerback group. Now, safeties. I'm going Chuck Clark, Tony Adams, Ashton Davis, and then Jalen Key. Isaiah Oliver, Jalen Key, who is it going to be? I think it's going to be really tough for Saleh, for Ulbrich, and even Joe Douglas to say, you know what, we just picked this guy. Last pick in the draft, 7th round, out of Alabama. A lot of people thought that he wasn't going to fall that far. He shows up, he's picked up the playbook, he's been impressive, he's had preseason starts, he's had moments in preseason where he's looked flat out awesome. He seems like a safe player, not a player that's going to ruin a lot of things. He doesn't really show a tendency to get confused out there. I think Jalen Key has been totally impressive, and this is another player, right? You take him and you put him on the practice squad, right? You give that job to Isaiah Oliver, which is fine. I like Isaiah Oliver. But I do think there is something to saying, okay, you know what more does Jalen Key have to do to make this football team as the 4th safety on it? Like, he's done everything that's been asked of him. You know, and again, you put Key on the practice squad. I think if you're a team that really needs safeties, if you're a team that's maybe led by a defensive head coach, you know, you can be looking at that player saying, you know what, that's a pretty good find for to just stash him on the practice squad. We're getting a 7th round pick and we're just going to put him on ours immediately after a great camp, after a great preseason. I don't know. It's pretty risky to me. So I think for me, Jalen Key makes that 4th that 4th safety spot is kind of the surprise here. And then of course, last but not least, the specialists: Thomas Morstead, Greg Zuerlein, Thomas Hennessy. And that's going to do it. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. It's going to be a crazy next 24 hours here, a little over 24 hours, but yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. Thanks so much, and as always, go Jets.